Hello, Lori here, and today I'm going to be doing some image transfers with magazines. And I usually like to use the Vogue magazine, but I will tell you I've had luck with pretty much all types of magazines, especially when I'm doing text. But today I wanted to do some model images because there's always a lot of interest in doing image transfers from magazines. I wanted to do a video for you today on what my process is and share with you some of my secrets for getting successful image transfers from magazines. So I've selected an image from Vogue and I have my gel plate and I'm using some Liquitex Mars Black paint out of the tube. So this is it's a higher viscosity, a little bit thicker than maybe your craft paints or your fluid paints. And I apply a light coating onto the plate. And you can see that I'm actually brayering over and over. I'm actually brayering off some of that black paint. And I'm cleaning it off on the my scrap paper to the side. And I get it almost to the point where you can see through it. And then I lay down my image. And then I take another brayer and I just give it a couple of passes over the top with very light pressure. And then I just peel back. And there's my image. So most magazines have like a glossy coating, and the ink that they're printed with is a laser type ink and it sits on top of the pages, so that gives us a resist. And what happens is when you place that face down, that resist leaves the image onto the paper. And I'm pulling a piece of tape to try to clean up the edges, but you'll see here in just a second I'm quickly abandon that and move to cleaning with a baby wipe. So using the baby wipe, I just carefully, you're going to go around the edges of the image and just clean up that plate in the areas where the image transfer didn't leave detail. And I just carefully clean that up. You'll notice I have a cotton swab as well off to the side. A lot of times I will use that cotton swab also to clean up while the paint is still wet. Or if the paint is already dried, I can actually wet the cotton swab with the baby wipe and then continue my cleanup process. Next, I'm going to come in with some deco art. This is a craft paint, and this one's yellow. I like to use yellows and bright colors on top of my image transfers because if you use a paint that's too dark, you won't be able to get the same level of detail. So I always like to have a high contrasting color when I'm working with the black for image transfer. So you'll see here what I'm doing. I applied it and I had too much on the plate. So I make sure that I roll some of that off and clean it off of my sheet. You can almost see the image through. That's how thin the paint is. And I get the best results when I work with thin paint on these image transfers. See, I wasn't quite thin enough. I went back and removed even more. And then I place my paper down and I make really good contact across the entire plate just to make sure that that paper has made good contact with the paint underneath so that it will release from the plate. And now for the fun part, and that is revealing the image. And I just pull that back. And there we go. So there's our first pull using magazine transfer. So we're going to do another one, and I've pulled out another image. I want to talk about the image just for a second. When I'm going through the magazine and selecting images, I always pull an image that has pretty high contrast. So you'll see this image right here. It's got a very light background and her clothing is dark and her face is kind of defined. So there's a lot of contrast going on there. And what that's going to do is it's going to help me get a better, more clear picture. So it's not just in the process, but it's also in selecting the correct image to get a successful image transfer. So following the same process as the first one, I applied the black paint down. I made it a very thin coat, so I rolled off a lot of that excess paint onto my scrap paper to the side. And now I'm going to take my brayer and like I did with the first one, I'm going to roll over it very lightly just a few times and then lift. There we go. And I got a decent transfer this time. I need to do a little cleanup. And so again, I will come back in with my baby wipe and cotton swab and clean up all around the image. A lot of times if there's a lot of white space, I'll use the baby wipe on the outer edge and then I'll come and refine that with a cotton swab. So that's what I'm going to do here. So if you'll notice, I take that cotton swab and I wet it using the baby wipe. So I find that puts just the right amount of moisture to lift that paint, because the paint's already dry on this plate. It dries really, really fast, especially when you do that thin coat that I feel is required to get a really good transfer. And so then I come in with the cotton swab and just clean in all the extra area. Now I've cleaned up. This time I want to come in with cadmium orange. Looks like it's still a little wet there, so I'm going to dry it with my little lollipop fan. Love this thing. It's a great way to dry things quickly if you're like me and you have no patience. Anyway, so we're going to use this cadmium orange, and I'm just put a little dab on, and I'm just going to roll it across that image, covering up everything, obviously. Now, the transparency on this paint is a lot less than the last paint I used, so you can actually see the image through the paint, and that's kind of nice. And so, again, making contact with my hand, and then I'll make the pull. Okay, let's see what we get. I love how this one turned out, and I love the orange in it too. That orange is so bright. You can see how another bright color, you see how that black really contrasts, so you can see the image quite well. Okay, so next up I found another really colorful image here to try. This one, her face and hair is in really good contrast. I'm not so sure about the contrast in all the detail, like the scarf she's got on and stuff, but we'll see how it goes. So I start out again, I put my black base down, and then I'm going to place the image right on top. And then I come in with this time I'm using the 6-inch sprayer just to make the contact all the way across the plate. And that one came out nice. Just like I thought though, her scarf didn't come out as well as I wanted. And this is going to require some cleanup as well. So rather than bore you with the cleanup process, I skipped ahead a bit. So I cleaned up around her head, and I'm cleaning up around her face a little bit here just before we do the pull. Okay, so I've cleaned up, and now I am using a pink pull this one, another nicely contrasting bright color. This time it is a Liquitex brand fluid acrylic. And now we'll do the pulls. I should mention that I'm just using regular copy paper for this exercise. Sometimes I like to use deli paper, wax paper even. I'm sorry, parchment paper, not wax paper. Deli paper, I've used parchment paper, tea bag paper, I love working with that, rice paper as well, and wet strength tissue. So like I love all of those papers as well. But when I'm going through an exercise like this, a lot of times I will just use copy paper. So here we have this pull with the pink and the black. A lot of good contrast there. That one looks really cool, I think. All right, let's move on to another one. Okay, so for this next one, kind of a spoiler alert here. This one doesn't turn out so great. But I want to show you what I do to kind of revive it and end up being one of my favorite prints of the session. So you can look, if you look at the image that I have ready to go here, you can tell it is not super high contrast. But I just loved her eyes and everything, and I thought it just looked really cool. So I wanted to try it anyway. And as I expected, it didn't come across the way I wanted it to. But I want to show you what I did. So I laid it down on top, take my brayer, go over it again, just like all the other processes. I think when I use this wide brayer, I go 3 times. That seems to be my magic number. And I don't apply pressure either. I just lightly do it. So you can see here, what a mess. But you know, I can clean that up a little bit, right? So that's what I attempt to do here. And so I'll let you watch some of that. I won't make you watch the whole process because I took quite a bit of time with that. But that's not the point of what I want to show you here. I wanted to add a little extra to it. So I'm going to show you what I did there. So I'm just cleaning it up here, and I will speed through this so you don't have to watch the whole process. So I'm just going around the whole thing and trying to clear up. And since her lips didn't get defined very well, I'd make a crazy attempt at adding them as best I could. So you know, that's a whole process, and it didn't turn out great. It just really didn't. And you know, but I wanted to salvage that because look at her eyes. I mean, those eyes. And so what I decided to do was pull out an alcohol marker and let's paint in some blue eyes with an alcohol marker. So then I started having a little fun with this. I'm just kind of tapping in the marker to transfer some of the ink onto the plate because I don't want to pick up the black. Because if you're not careful, you will pick up that black paint with the alcohol that's in this marker or the ink that's in the marker. So I'm just dabbing it there just to give her some pretty blue eyes. And I said, well, why should I stop there? Let's go with the lips. And so then I went and found a pink alcohol marker. And I just started tapping in some pink for the lips. I didn't want to overdo it here because it's going to look really unnatural if you're not careful. I chose a very pale pink color because I just didn't want it to be overbearing. And then I decided why stop there. So I got like a lime green marker, and I figured I'd do the highlights of her hair green. These alcohol markers actually work really good on the plate, especially for accents. I do teach alcohol ink on the gel plate in the Ultimate Gel Plate Experience. I'll put a link in the description in case you're interested in learning more about that. It's a full course on gel printing by myself and another artist, Terry Jones. If you don't know Terry, she's quite talented artist. And the two of us put together a gel plate course. It's got 75 lessons in it currently and growing. It's called the Ultimate Gel Plate Experience. I'll put a link for you in case you're interested. But getting back to this, so I just added in some of that green around and thought, well, that would be nice. So though I don't want to pull this with something because alcohol markers are transparent. So I needed to pull this with something like white. Or actually, in this case, I'm using, what color is that? It was light buttermilk by Deco Art to pull this. So it's not a white, it's kind of like an off-white color. And I'm just spreading that on the plate. Same process as all the others. I like to do a very thin coat. And make sure it's also wet when I do the pull. Obviously it won't pull if it's not wet. And getting ready to do the pull. Here we go. Love how it turned out. I love those little accent colors in there. So much fun. Really added, basically it salvaged that transfer in my opinion. I didn't think it was a great transfer because the contrast of the image was off, but love what I got. So anyway, so that was some of the models. But I thought one last one I would do here. I would do an image that's not a model. And I found this really cool Chanel watch. So just wanted to show you that you don't always have to do faces and people when you do image transfers. A lot of times some of the ads have some really interesting textures in them and stuff. So I always like to see how those will transfer. So I do that. I place it down on the plate and I give it a couple of passes and then we pull it back to see what we get. Look how cool that is. And to pull this image, I'm going to use some of this bright green color. Again, another nice contrasting color. And I didn't mention it earlier, but I do use two separate brayers here. So I have one brayer I use specifically for the black portion of this process, and then I have another brayer that I use for all the other colors. And that keeps the images clean. You don't want to use the same brayer, if you can help it, for both sections of this process. Okay, so let's see what we get here. I really do like the texture and images that are in this watch. And also, thanks for joining me here through this process. I have a lot of fun with these, and I love doing them and sharing my techniques with everyone. So if you like this, give me a thumbs up. It helps. And if you have questions, leave me a comment, and I'd be happy to answer your questions. Thanks for watching, and happy gel printing.